Gambia government will publish the final report on financial mismanagement of exiled former President Jammeh this Friday. In South Africa, Nigerians have begun to flee the xenophobic attacks on fellow Africans. The body of former President of Zimbabwe awaits state burial after being flown back to the country. High Court in Banjul has granted 7 youth activists a bail bond to the tune of $100,000 each. These are the headlines. More coming on your way on the World Today News edition. Hello viewers, you are watching the World Today News on iAfrica TV. Now the news in detail. The Gambia government has said that it will release a report of the Commission of Inquiry into financial dealings of the government of former President Yahya Jammeh on Friday. Inquiry into financial activities of public bodies, enterprises and offices was launched by President Adama Barrow in July 2017. The Justice Minister said in March that the Commission has forfeited worth of $1 billion from landed properties of former President Yahya Jammeh. The government said in a statement on Wednesday that a 93-page document based on findings and recommendations from the report will also be released tomorrow. The Commission, which had initial 3-month mandate, continued for nearly 2 years, during which senior officials and close allies of exiled former President Yahya Jammeh testified. Zimbabwean former President Robert Mugabe's body arrived yesterday at the country's international airport named after him. President Mugabe, who died in Singapore last week, had his successor, President Emmerson Mnangagwa, and state ministers receive his body. Defatu Bangura has more on that.
Robert Mugabe, who died last week in Singapore, has arrived at the country's international airport named after him in the capital Harare yesterday. Mugabe's successor, President Emmerson Mnangagwa, arrived at the airport to receive the body of the leader whom he overthrew in a military coup in 2017. A high-level delegation led by Vice President Kembo Mohadi was sent earlier this week to help repatriate the former Zimbabwean leader from Singapore. Former First Lady Grace Mugabe, who donned all black, arrived at the airport with the body of her husband, shying away from rolling cameras. Government ministers were also present at the Robert Gabriel Mugabe International Airport on Wednesday, with the ruling Zimbabwean African National Union Patriotic Front supporters in memorial songs and dances. While in power, Mugabe used to have hordes of supporters and government officials thronging the airport, welcoming him from any foreign trip. As of this hour, it remains unclear as to where the late Zimbabwean president would be buried, whether at the National Heroes Acre or his rural home in the Zimbabwe district of Mashonaland, West Province. In 1980, the country held its first general election, where Mugabe was elected as the first prime minister and after 1987 as president of Zimbabwe. Mugabe ruled the country for nearly 40 years, becoming a symbol for African liberation movements, but his last years in power were marked by repression of political opponents and economic decline. iAfrica News, Neifatu Bangura.
Former President Robert Mugabe's body arrives in Harare, Zimbabwe yesterday. Singer and activist Killer Ace and 6 other youth who were arrested and charged alongside 30 men for their alleged involvement in the July 24th mass protest in Serekunda have been granted bail by the High Court in Banjul earlier today. Amadou Kante filed in this report.
Singer and activist Killer Ace and 6 other youths were arrested and charged alongside 30 men for their alleged involvement in the July 24 mass protest in Serekunda have been granted bail by the High Court in Banjul on Thursday. Justice Mahoney granted each of the 7 men a bail bond of $100,000 and ordered each of them to provide a Gambian sortie. The judge granted the accused persons legal team bail application in the absence of both the 7 men and their counsels. No state prosecutor was also present in the court. Earlier, before the judge delivered his ruling, the defense team sent a message asking the court to proceed without them since they have already filed in their bail application. 30 out of these 37 men who were earlier charged alongside the 7 men have been released by the police. Government says it has gathered sufficient and clear evidence against the 7, including Killer Ace, for their involvement in the protest after investigations into the matter. Shortly after Justice Mahoney granted the accused persons bail, Madi Jobate, a human rights activist, welcomed the decision and the releasing of the other 30 youths, saying it was unjustifiable to put them in jail.
I think in the first place it's welcome that we have citizens coming out of jail, which we think is unjustified to put them in jail in the first place. So if the High Court decides now to grant them bail to come out, as you know, the charges have not even been brought to the High Court yet. Like, they've not been charged yet in the High Court, even though they might still transfer the case or, the charges to the High Court. So, but I think it's a good decision the judge made to grant them bail. In terms of the bail conditions, $100,000 for each, I still think that's outlandish.
Aliou Ba, one of the critics of the state for the arrest of the 37 youth, said he is happy they are granted bail because no one should be endorsed in human condition. He said he is still dissatisfied with the dragging of the case.
It's just unfortunate that the government of the Gambia continues to make these, these mistakes and these blunders. And I mean, of course, I'm happy they were granted bail because nobody deserves to be in those inhuman conditions. But I'm not happy the fact that the government of the Gambia is still trying to drag this case that they have no substance to gain from it. The intimidation of activists and young people in this country. My stance remains the same, that they should be released unconditionally and that the government of the Gambia should come out and apologize to the people of the Gambia for such blunders, and knowing forthwith that they cannot intimidate the masses of our people, that they cannot use this type of, they cannot use law and order as a rhetoric to intimidate young people in this country anymore.
The 37 youths were rounded up in July after their first arrest and released by police anti-crime unit for allegedly involving in the July 24 mass protest in Serekunda that ensued from the death of a 36-year-old man, Usman Dabo, who was alleged to have been manhandled by the police anti-crime unit. All the 37 men were earlier on arraigned before a lower court in Kanifing on an 8-count charge, including conspiracy to commit felony, unlawful assembly, and prohibition of conduct and conducive to breaches of peace. On September 3rd, the Kanifing lower court ordered for them to be remanded in custody until October, when the case will be transferred to the High Court, whose judges are on vacation. The court could not give any specific date when the case will resume at the High Court. A source close to the case says government decided to rescind its October hearing decision following a mass public outcry for the plight of the accused persons. Reporting for Africa News, I am Amadou Kante.
Killer Ace and Co. have been granted bail today at the High Court proceeding. Let's now take a break and be back shortly. Welcome back. You're watching The World Today News. We now take a look at our remaining stories. Ongoing protests against the Haiti President Jovenel Moise has prompted clashes between the police and protesters in front of the country's parliament on Wednesday. The police fired tear gas at protesters, with at least 2 being held in custody. Demonstrators are calling for an end to corruption, high inflation, and poor living conditions. Bintabaji reports on that.
Clashes erupted between protesters demanding the resignation of Haitian President Jovenel Moise and police in front of the parliament in Port-au-Prince on Wednesday. Footage shows police firing tear gas at protesters in addition to detaining at least 2 people. Protesters burned ties and set barricades, in addition to burning a police van. Protesters had apparently gathered in the front of the parliament in attempt to prevent the general policy presentation session of Prime Minister-designated Fins William Michel. The session was reportedly postponed.
We are here to prevent the session from happening, also demanding President Jovenel Moise to step down and put himself at disposal of the justice.
Anti-government protests against the Haitian President Jovenel Moise began in February in impoverished quarters of Port-au-Prince. Demonstrators are protesting against the country's corruption, double-digit inflation, and poor living conditions. For iAfrica TV, I am Binta Baji.
Protesters call for Haiti president to step down and face justice. A good number of Nigerians have left South Africa on Wednesday to escape xenophobic attacks from South Africans. Nigeria has announced the return of 600 citizens who have voluntarily decided to leave for their lives. Nigerian President Buhari will travel to South Africa on this matter in October. Omar Bajinka gives us more.
Scores of Nigerians were on Wednesday spotted at the Johannesburg Tambo Airport waiting to catch flights for West Africa following waves of xenophobic attacks on fellow Africans in South Africa. This came after Nigeria announced repatriation of around 600 citizens who have voluntarily decided to leave South Africa in order to save their lives and properties. Staff of the Nigerian embassy in the Horn of Africa are busy helping their citizens in the traveling arrangements. One Nicholas from Nigeria explains why he got to go home.
Well, I'm going home because South Africa doesn't welcome foreigners, especially we blacks. What have we done to them? Why are they killing us? Killing Nigerians, burning our shops, not giving us anything. Why?
Although the West Africans are said to be leaving the country on voluntary basis, the lives of Victor Izzat maintained that going home was never part of their immediate plans.
I never wanted to leave because it's a nice place anyway, but the people inside of it, it's not making things happening for us. They don't look at foreigners as if they are human beings. They look at us as a bunch of beings. They don't care about us. They don't want to know how we feel.
This situation is not only compelling but also disappointing, as non-citizens are not allowed to own luxury even though they work hard enough to earn them.
And it's very disappointing to see that at the end of it, we are down. They're taking everything from us. So there's nothing we can do other than going home.
Meanwhile, Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari is expected in South Africa this October to discuss the losing relations between the Horn of Africa and its fellow AU member states. For iAfrica TV News, I am Umar Bajinka.
Nigerians in South Africa have already started repatriating amid xenophobic attacks from South Africans. Indian student has invented a helicopter from locally available waste materials. This, according to him, came after a dream of him making something that will give him a global identity. The helicopter, awaiting government approval, is capable of flying above roofs and trees. Let's take a look. An Indian student became a local celebrity after he assembled an aircraft from parts of 2 motorcycles and waste materials. Chatram Gurjar showcased his invention to villagers in Jamdi in the state of Rajasthan on Monday. He told residents that his move was motivated by a dream in which he saw himself making something of that nature before some years of hard work.
While I was studying, I dreamed of making something that would register my name and give me an identity. Then I thought of this invention. After years of hard work, I finally made this helicopter. In order to make this a working model, I bought 2 old motorbikes and also purchased a lot of waste materials to come up with this design. I assembled this helicopter with those materials.
The boy named his helicopter after Pawan Putra, meaning son of the wind, which flies at the height of 6 meters above land. His project awaits approval from the Indian government to perform operational trial before the media.
Today my helicopter is completely ready to fly. I have already done a few trials. If the government permits, then I will do the trials in front of the media and the whole world. The people in my village are happy and they appreciate me for my invention. I have already started the paperwork for the trials and it's under process. Once the government approves, I will do the rest.
Chatram Gujar is born to a farmer in the province of India. He underwent industrial training from where he derived the passion to come up with the helicopter project. Indian student invents helicopter after dreams of him making something of such. Well, viewers, that's all we have for you on the World Today News. For more on these and other stories, kindly log on to our website, iAfrica.tv. I am Fatmata Jai for now.